'Cause these are my people, and this is my land. This is my land. This is what we pray for.
Using nefarious intent network.
Well, you've talked about password.
In an attempt to keep it hidden.
You won't understand. You won't understand. This is my country.
To the Mel K show. Everyone knows that I love my guest today. He is one of the most interesting, and everything that he brings to the table is always what you want to hear at the same time, what you don't want to hear, and he explains it in the best way. And there's really very few international journalists that got such a grasp on geopolitics, and I'm really blessed to have back Ben Fulford. Thank you for joining me, sir.
Thanks for having me on. What would you like to talk about today, Mel?
Well, first things first. So when we say that it's a biblical battle between good and evil, it really is, right?
Well, I mean, it's definitely biblical. I mean, we're dealing with some very ancient ideological wars, shall we say? I mean, you know, I don't want to invoke too much spiritual, esoteric stuff, but even if you take it as a metaphor, we're dealing with large groups of humans who have been fighting over different ideologies for literally thousands of years. In other words, a group that worships what we call Satan, what they call Lucifer or Baal, versus, you know, ones who believe in a more benevolent deity or nature. You know, that's. But it is biblical. I mean, we really are dealing with some kind of crisis in monotheism, shall we say?
Right. Yeah. And it looks like at least the American media is so off the charts in their narrative and their dialogue. They won't even acknowledge that there's two sides to every story. What are you seeing happening in Ukraine? Because I'm telling you, the American media is not telling this full story at all. They're ignoring everything about the biolabs, everything about the Nazi aspect. What is the truth about what's happening right now in Ukraine?
All right. Well, you know, again, from primary sources, and this includes British intelligence, Russian intelligence, Polish intelligence, etc., Germans. Okay. There's many aspects to it, but first of all, I understand at a very deep level, an agreement was reached between the Russians and the Europeans that they would go back to the old agreement between King Frederick the Great and the Tsar of Russia, where they would divide their lines of influence in Europe along the Dnieper River. Pardon me if I don't pronounce that properly, which is what separates, you know, Western Ukraine from the area they're fighting over now, Donetsk, Lugansk, you know, that part. So there's one group that's saying, all right, we're gonna go back to that old line, and then that will lead to a peace in Europe and Russia joining NATO or a European security architecture. And they are fighting against a group that wants to recreate the ancient kingdom of Khazaria that existed about 1,000 years ago in what's now the Ukraine and Kazakhstan. Right. And these are the people who worship Bahamut or Satan, or you know the goat-faced being with
right.
Yeah, and they believe that it's their destiny to rule humanity from the reestablished Khazaria as well as from Israel. But it's interesting to note that there has been a break between the Israelis and the people in the Ukraine. Okay, the Israeli government is not sending weapons to the Ukraine. They're not supporting this whole thing. So it's clear that Israel has broken with this cult. So they're saying, no, this is not Judaism. We don't worship Satan. You know, these people are not part of us. But they were hiding in the ghettos and hiding behind the Jews, and as well as pretending to be Christians and Muslims.
Yes.
So it's a very complicated issue, but clearly the families that own the major media corporations in the West are part of this, what I call the Khazarian mafia. And they're the ones who are now carrying out what can only be described as hysterical propaganda at this point. There's no even pretense at objectivity.
None. And the crazy part, I'll tell you, is people in America, whether it took a long time, but right now, people, if they're not upset about one thing, they're upset about another. And there is some kind of feeling that there is a sense that people, the American people, are angry. They've had it. They know that they're being lied to. This Joe Biden character every day is getting worse. It seems like we're watching it literally. I know people say it, but it's getting to a place where it does seem like we're watching something, but it's making a mockery of, I think, the Americans and our country. What is the rest of the world thinking when they look at what's going on in America right now, from your point of view over there?
Well, I mean, the rest of the world realizes that the American unipolar moment is over, that we're heading towards a multipolar world. In other words, it's not going to be the Americans telling everybody what to do.
Right.
It's, everyone getting together and agreeing on what to do. And the people who control this whole project are having a hard time giving it up. I mean, they believe, and there's another group or sort of an aspect to it. There's this sort of, the eye at the top of the pyramid, but this idea of creating a world empire controlled by a single dictator. This is a very Roman type idea, but it's also Babylonian,
Right.
A single god king ruling the entire planet. And they believe that it's their destiny and they just cannot give it up. So unfortunately, we are dealing with religious fanatics and they don't listen to reason. So this is why it may come to the need to actually remove these people, not only from power, but maybe from the planet entirely. That's what it's coming down to. And if you look forensically, you can see that a lot of it really does seem to have its headquarters in Switzerland.
Right.
There's no doubt whatsoever that Pope Francis has been replaced with a fake. Remember, he disappeared for 2 weeks. They had this hologram appearing at his window.
I saw it. I remember.
Yeah, and then this man appears who his words and actions, and there's actually videos of him adjusting his rubber mask too. Okay, but his words and actions are very different from the original Francis. And he's also gone off the reservation recently. He's talking about coprophilia, which is love of feces, and he's promoting homosexuality, which the original Francis was opposed to. I'm not making a comment either way. I'm just saying this is not what Francis was like.
Right.
And he's telling everybody to get vaccinated. And it's clear that the Pope has fallen. The papacy is under control of this group in Switzerland that I call the Octagon Group. It's like an ancient Egyptian cult, where they want to install a god king. And I don't know if it's Klaus Schwab or somebody else, but clearly they still think that's their agenda and that's what they're still pushing for.
Yeah.
Another way of looking at it, I watched a nature documentary about parasitical wasps. They lay their eggs inside a caterpillar, and the caterpillar is munching away, and inside its body they slowly eat it, and then they completely turn it into something that goes against what its own nature says. And that happened to the American people. And these people aren't Jews. I want to repeat that. They were hit by some kind of satanic parasitical attack that took over the brain of the government and started making the American people do stuff that was against what America stood for, what their values stood for. And they're just waking up to this now. And a lot of them still don't know where the enemy is. They're being misdirected. They think the problem is with the Asians, or they think the problem is with the Jews. It's not. It's with this group of Satan worshipers who took over the highest levels of the government. And that's the problem. And that's how the world looks at it.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Also, now a lot of weird news coming out of Japan, and you're in Japan. So It's very unclear what's going on there. I do know that Rahm Emanuel, it seems like our embassies all have people placed in them that are making a lot of moves. But I know Rahm Emanuel is in Japan and Brzezinski's in Poland, but suddenly Japan and Poland, Japan surprisingly more than anywhere else, seems to be siding with this fraudulent regime that is wreaking havoc on the world. What is going on in Japan?
Well, you got to remember the Japanese were allies with the Nazis in World War II. And the people in the Ukraine are also Nazis. They openly declare themselves to be Nazis. They worship the Black Sun. And so it's that whole network at work. The reason why we're leaving these people alone in Japan is because they're going to implode on their own. It's just a matter of time. But I know for a fact that the imperial family does not support what the government here is doing. And I know that a lot of the military don't. But at the same time, they don't want this to become a one China world either. So they're kind of sitting on the fence. And the other thing you need to understand about Japan, what they're doing is mostly lip service. Okay, if you actually look at their actions, they're very trivial, and the important stuff, they're not going along with the agenda. So it's mostly lip service, but it's also what we're seeing is the end of the 80 years of occupation of Japan, and there is going to be a move to make Japan an independent country. Right. And I know that a deal has been reached between the Taiwanese and the Chinese. Right. Taiwan is going to reunify with China peacefully. The deal that has been reached, as I understand, is that Taiwan will keep their army, they'll keep their democracy, but they'll be able to send someone to Beijing to help run China as a whole. Maybe the first one will be a finance minister. They might even have a Taiwanese president of all of China, but that's the sort of deal being reached. The thing, though, is that it's not very well known, but Japan is secretly ruled out of Taiwan.
Wow.
Because at the end of, remember, China was one of the victorious allies. The nationalist Chinese under the Kuomintang, under Chiang Kai-shek, were among the victors of World War II, and they were given control of Japan in the treaty after the war. Then China fell to the communists, and the people who were given control of Japan moved to Taiwan. And I've been to Taiwan, and they're more nationalist Japanese than Japan. I mean, I went to a karaoke there, and they're all playing these military songs that I'd never even seen in Japan.
Wow.
So, there's that whole aspect that still needs to be worked out. So I think another way of looking at Japan is like a woman who's watching these two warriors fight, and she knows that the one that wins is going to be her lover or rapist or whatever. That's sort of the situation, I think.
Wow. And because the people, we're not getting any news here, you know that. So I want to also ask you, what I read when I read foreign papers is that the Russian people are behind what Putin's doing. If you read it here, it's the total opposite and nothing making sense. What are you hearing from inside of Russia? Because I know you have people placed all over the world. So what is going on? What are the Russian people feeling right now about everything?
No, the Russian people are very, very much supportive of this war because, they have a lot of reasons to do this. Now, I actually got documents sent to me by a Russian colonel that showed me exactly how they looked at it. What happened, according to them, was that after the communist revolution, the communists, who were Khazarian mafia, started creating artificially the nation of the Ukraine. Remember, they carried out the Holodomor, the deliberate starvation. Yeah. According to the Russians, they killed 3 million intelligentsia in the Ukraine region and replaced them with members of a cult known as Chabad. These people aren't Jews, although they claim to be. And they artificially created the borders of the Ukraine, and then they started trying to make the Ukrainian language different from Russian. They say that the Ukraine was an artificial creation. And the other thing is that the Russians know that they lost, more than 50 million people in the 20th century to these people, not just through starvation, but through World War II. And they think of it as part of the ancient war against the Khazarians. Remember, the Khazarians were slave traders. They were taking, the Russians, the Slavs are called slaves because these Khazarians were taking Northern European peasants and kidnapping them and selling them to the Middle East. And eventually the Russians and the Rus and all the surrounding people said enough is enough, because they were not only just kidnapping, they're killing their children in large quantities, drinking their blood, doing all sorts of nasty stuff, killing travelers and assuming their identities. So they all got together and they invaded Khazaria, and they destroyed the country. Their leadership fled to Europe, where they, slowly infiltrated the top levels of government. But they have seen the textbooks in the Ukraine, the teaching where they say, we have to kill all the Russians, the women, the children, everybody. So they think it's a battle for survival. And that's why they're fighting so hard. And I understand, too, that the war is more or less over at this point. Mariupol, they told me the reason they attacked Mariupol and not Kiev is because that's where all the Nazis were headquartered. That's where they were. That was the real headquarters. So the government in Kiev was not that relevant and not that hostile. So they'd created a parallel government, and that's what they have destroyed. So Mariupol has fallen, and for them, that means most of the Nazis have been destroyed. And it's interesting that recently reports from the border of the Moldova is that people are moving back into the Ukraine.
Right, I saw.
So instead of refugees fleeing, they're going home. That's a good sign that the common people know that it's okay to go home now, that things have calmed down. So no matter what you see in the Western propaganda media, it looks like it's over. Now, there's another thing. I've been asked not to talk about it too much. Maybe after we go off the record, I'll tell you a bit more. But basically, a lot of the arms that are being sent into the Ukraine by the Western countries are being sold to a third country.
Oh, wow.
They say, oh, yeah, give us all these weapons.
Sense.
And instead of using them to fight the Russians, they're selling them and making some bucks. That's my understanding of what's really going on.
That wouldn't surprise me. I was also wondering if all the weapons they left in Afghanistan had made their way into the trade out there, too, because...
Sure. All those stingers and stuff. I mean, yeah, they don't make stingers anymore, but... it's definitely an arms bazaar, and the other thing is that, a lot of the mercenaries there are trained by a man by the name of Michael Aquino. He was the head of the U.S. Special Forces, General Michael Aquino. You've heard of him, right?
Yeah.
He was the head of U.S. Special Forces for a long time. He was an open Satan worshiper. He made no secret of it. And a lot of his disciples are now fighting in the Ukraine as mercenaries.
That's very scary. He's the MK Ultra guy, big Satanist. I remember he was promoted by Oprah back in the 80s. He's the eyebrows. And he's a very proud Satanist, but he tortures people. He's a very evil guy. The fact that he's been in our military is shocking. I'm not surprised to hear that. Is he still alive?
No, he's dead. He's gone down.
Just people, disciples. Yeah, it's
his disciples at this point. So that's being cleared up to a large extent. Now, the other thing that I've heard from the Russians is that all these witches. I mean, again, this is really weird stuff, but they all gathered together and they're making a 40-day incantation and chants and curses and hexes, all this stuff out of like the movies,
Right.
And the Russians have gathered all the shamans from all over Siberia, all of the north, and they've been, invoking the nature gods. So wow. It's kind of like, not only are they fighting on the ground, but there's this spiritual stuff going on or whatever, which it's kind of, I posted a video of these shamans chanting. It's quite dramatic. I
saw it.
Yeah. But
it's real. It's real. It's really happening.
And there really are witches from all over the world gathered in the Ukraine. It's kind of, it's bizarre stuff, but it is really like some kind of epic final war between the Satanists and their opponents, who are the true monotheists, the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, and not the ones who just pretend to be.
Makes you wonder, because of Switzerland, what's going on at CERN? What are they doing out there? They have to be contributing somehow.
They have. I mean, I don't want to get too esoteric because I don't know about it, but I have heard that they've been trying to create a portal to escape.
I heard that too.
It's like, I mean, all right, I don't necessarily believe it, but the story I've been told by these more Space Force types is that there's been some kind of intergalactic war that's been going on for thousands of years, and that the leadership group of these enemies, the fallen angels, had made their last stand on the planet Earth. And this is what we know as Lucifer and the fallen angels. Right. And that an intergalactic force has come on this planet to permanently remove them from this universe. And that's why the planet is under quarantine. And that's why these people in CERN are trying to to create a portal to escape what they think is the final punishment. This is a story I've been told. I'm not saying I believe it, but it's definitely.
Look, I hope that that's true. Honestly, that they are here to remove them because the evil is so pronounced. Something I've never talked to you about, and I really never heard you talk much about, but I've been seeing a lot of it lately. So these guys are really obsessed with transhumanism and getting rid of humanity and melding it with AI. I have a feeling that they're way farther ahead than people think, and people still think that this transhumanism agenda is like science fiction. Do you know anything about this? Because I think you hear them talk like Harari and Klaus Schwab or even Eric Schmidt, and you're thinking, wait, they must really be way ahead of us.
Well, I always remember that statement by Henry Kissinger at one of their meetings that in the future it'll be as impossible for the average people to rebel against this as it is for a sheep to rebel against its master. And I know they've been working on microchipping and otherwise controlling people. They want to turn this into a permanent animal farm, a human animal farm. They want to enslave us forever. And they've been working on it for decades. They had ability to, remotely control people way back in the 70s. So for sure, these vaccines are definitely about some kind of remote control. But I understand that there are countermeasures being taken. But I do know, for example, that I had South African and former Rhodesian, now Zimbabwe white secret police people contact me. This is when they had the apartheid government. It was like a white minority controlling the Africans. And they told me that they used electromagnetic radiation to control mobs. They could either calm a group down or incite them to riots using electromagnetic tools. And so for example, if they wanted an excuse to shoot them all, they would hit them with something that would make them all frantic and start rioting, and then bah, 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 bah. And this was, technology from the 1980s. So that's why this 5G and all these cell phones and stuff, they can be used to control people. And I think that's what they've been trying to do. That's why I've heard some talk about a need to temporarily shut down the wireless networks to clean that stuff up. Because you can also use the same wireless technology to make people healthier and happier. So there's some kind of electronic battle going on too.
That's what you always talk about. That's the good part about you. You always talk about the good things, which brings me to another topic. I was reading something you wrote, and then I was thinking about it. I really feel like the UN has no purpose anymore at this point, other than money laundering and putting puppets in places, and everywhere they go, if they make it worse. What's your vision of the UN? I don't see how they continue on forward, because I think it's very obvious that NATO is the one world military. I don't see the UN having any power or any say. They keep doing things like kicking Russia out or making arbitrary things. Nobody seems to care anymore.
Well, the UN clearly lost it was set up with a lot of idealism. The idea was that from now on, we'll never have countries invading other countries, that war shall be ended, and they had set up the Security Council, but it became clear that it was toothless, especially after the end of the so-called Cold War, when basically you see countless cases of the entire world voting one way and then Israel and the United States vetoing them. The most recent example, and Israel is now broken with these people, but was this UN resolution condemning Nazism, which only the US and the Ukraine opposed.
Right. That should have been a sign.
Yeah, I mean, that's something American Jews should think. Your government is supporting Nazis, who are the people who, killed your families. What are you doing? Wake up, hey? Smell the coffee.
I know.
But clearly, and I've been told that the UN is a privately owned corporation headquartered in California, but it's clearly dysfunctional. There's a lot of people in the UN who are doing good work, feeding and housing refugees, doing other things. So the healthy parts of the UN can be taken over by something new. But the other thing is that the UN Security Council, the 5 permanent members are, France, England, the United States, Russia, and China. So 4 out of the 5 are European. And let's face it, Europeans are only 1 out of maybe 7 people in the world. So we have proposed a division of 7 regions to take over the Security Council that more accurately reflects the actual composition of humanity. And a lot that has high level of support. So, for example, the Muslims would have a vote equal to the Europeans, the Indians would as well, the Chinese, the East Asians, and that's why if you look at the Ukraine war on a world map, you'll realize that only a small group of countries in Western Europe and North America actually support the sanctions, and the Japanese are pretending to. They're giving lip service to it.
Right. That's why I was surprised to see that the Japanese somehow were one of the only people supporting it. I thought, well, what's going on? That's why I asked you about Japan. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, at a certain point, we're going to make a move against those people, but right now we're letting them just, giving them enough rope to hang themselves with. So that's what's going on right now. But clearly, though, the whole thing is coming to an end, and the other aspect to it. Okay, this is what's really the clincher, is that the group in Switzerland that control the BIS, that control the Western financial system, they control numbers in computers, but they have lost control of the underlying economic reality. So they're no longer able to control most of the world's industrial production or production of minerals or agricultural goods. In other words, the more than 50% of the physical world is out of their control. They're probably down to like 30%. So that means that all these numbers that they're pumping up the stock market to these astronomical heights. They're pumping up virtual currencies. They don't control the physical reality anymore. And 9 out of the 10 largest armies in the world don't support them either. So militarily, they don't have it either. So they are mathematically doomed. It's just a matter of time at this point.
Right.
And I do know that the military white hats in Mount Cheyenne are with the Russians and against the occupiers of the Beltway, and they are making their moves. And I know that a lot of very prominent people in the so-called Democratic, I would say Democratic Party, have tested positive for COVID-19 and disappeared. And I've been told this is a metaphor for being arrested. Maybe you can check. Has Nancy Pelosi or Schiff been around, or Hillary Clinton? The problem is they always produce some kind of
right. They're trying, but there's a lot of, you watch them and you think, there's glitches, whatever. I feel like they're showing us that. But within a week, everyone in the Obama regime, the loyalists, all those, everyone got it. And honestly, I don't think anyone else is getting it in America, but these people. And then the worst part is they say that they've been 3 times jabbed, and yet they got it again. And every single one of them says the same thing after. Thank God they got their booster, or it would be so much worse. And it's like, at what point? It's just they become so overtly evil to me that I just don't see how much longer this can go on.
I mean, it is imploding, and I know that things look a lot worse from inside the United States.
They do.
You still have this propaganda bubble, but the rest of the world is looking very much like it is being liberated, and that the era of these people terrorizing the planet is coming to an end. And that's what I think really the battle in the Ukraine is about. And it'll end when you see the Davos crowd in Switzerland removed, when you see that whole area around Lake Geneva cleaned up, and when you see probably the Pope, it may well be, okay, I'm going to make some bold prediction here, but it may well be that Joe Biden will be the last president of the United States, and Pope Francis will be the last Pope of the Catholic Church.
I mean, it's looking that way, because at this point, all the old, all the old house of cards are about to collapse, and they'll take them all with them, because we have the one last thing I was going to ask you about is the city of London. And Boris Johnson seems, I don't know what he's doing, but it doesn't make any sense. And then we see again Harry and Meghan out there again parading around talking about equality. I can't believe these people are out there. What is your take on England and the monarchy and all of that? It just seems so phony. It's like,
the British people do support the monarchy as a symbol, and I think they do best under a queen like Queen Victoria or Queen Elizabeth, where they're some kind of female force, a benevolent force. Now, this group did fight against the plan for genocide back at the year 2000 election with Al Gore. They're the ones saying, okay, there was a big secret meeting with these secret rulers. And one group says, okay, we have to kill 90% of the useless eaters in order to save the environment. And the group around Queen Elizabeth, the Committee of 300, a lot of the old royalty said, no, you can't kill 90% of the world's population. We can save the environment by taxing carbon, by paying the poor countries money to grow their forests back. So they've been fighting against this plan within the elite. And I think that at that level, they are with humanity. But they also, I do talk to people at MI6, and they do say that the political establishment in London is hopelessly corrupt. They've been bribed and blackmailed, and they were going to replace Boris Johnson with the leader of the opposition until they found out they had videos of this guy raping children. And it's like, oh my God, I mean, it's just so corrupt that the whole political establishment will probably have to go. But it's important to realize that they canceled COVID in England, okay? They said, all right, we're not going to do this anymore. And they just put an end to it. So that's a sign of where they really stand. At the same time, though, the West militarily does need to, at least at some point, say, hey, at a certain point, we're going to fight because they don't want to become Chinese slaves. They don't want to become Russian slaves. So there is a level, and it's happening. For example, Marine Le Pen, the French presidential candidate, is saying, hey, if we don't work with with the Russians, we're all going to end up, obeying the Chinese.
right.
And so there is a group that says the West needs to unify again, but not around NATO as it stands. It must include Russia. And that's what the fight is about now. It's to liberate the West. But at the same time, there's a group that says the West needs to, stay independent and not become a subsidiary of China. And that's where it's kind of why they sort of have to sit the fence militarily.
Yeah, I think a lot of people here also see that DC, the vassal state that is DC, is corrupt to the core. I mean, from top to bottom, it is amazing. But I do believe the American people are at kind of a scary point where people have had it. I mean, I don't care if you voted for Biden. What I found out also is only 30% of Americans even voted, which makes all the numbers crazier. But like, I think, go ahead.
The American peasants are out there with their pitchforks already. I mean,
they are. I'm telling you.
For example, the Wall Street firms in Washington, New York, telling the people working there to dress down, otherwise they're going to be attacked.
Right.
The buses, taking people to work at Google are being stones are being thrown at them.
True.
Hundreds of gangs are targeting rich people. It's a revolution, and you see there's train robberies for the first time since the Old West. The mass attacks on luxury stores. Oh yeah, no, I say that's a revolution, and it's going to be chaotic, which is why I hope at a certain point the military white hats will step in and remove all these criminals from the government, and they need to stage some kind of a jubilee. Write off all the debt, redistribute give back all the stuff that was stolen from the American people. Yeah. Something like that has to happen. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos and bloodshed and mass beheadings. Yeah, sort of French Revolution type scenario. And
that's what it feels like. I keep telling people, I feel like we're in the French Revolution in America, and the people at the top just haven't gotten it yet, because you still have Schmidt back there, apparently basically running our DARPA and then the Office of Science and Technology. You got Gates, you got what's his name? Fink at BlackRock. These are the people that are ruling our country, and people are seeing it. That's why. I mean, when you have Google openly censoring free speech, and yet they have so much power, you say, well, wait a minute, who voted for Google? What gave them this right? Who appointed them? Why can they decide what we say and what we don't say?
Why can they decide that certain truths must not be told?
Right.
Who gave them that right? So I think that I understand, and maybe you can confirm that Washington, D.C. is a ghost town now.
That's what everyone says. And they still haven't been back to vote in person over COVID. We all know that that's not true. So it's just, yeah, I mean, but the problem is that they're creating so much cognitive dissonance and so much chaos that people don't know what to think.
I keep repeating to the military and the White Hats is that you need to go to Silicon Valley. You need to go to Palo Alto, California. You need to take over Google, and you need to go to New York City. You need to take over the Bank of America, the sort of the Voice of America headquarters.
Right.
And then you need to go to CNN and take over the headquarters there, and start forcing them to tell the truth. Because the truth shall set you free, and that's what they need to do. They need to find, actually physically locate these people. The other, of course, the whole Microsoft complex in Washington State. All that needs to be occupied by the White Hats, and the media, the big corporate media groups need to, be forced to tell the truth based on facts from the real world, and not some kind of fantasy propaganda narrative. That's not what the media is to do. They don't have to take a political stance. They just need to tell the truth and let the people decide based on the truth. People cannot make good decisions, and democracy cannot function if there's not the truth, because people can only make good decisions if they have good information. And right now they don't. They're being told lies and manipulated by fabricated reality.
I'm looking at it. I think half these newscasters are already AI. I mean, I can't even believe they all say the same thing. It's like they seem like they're brainwashed or something, because it's out of, but I'm telling you, I feel like the average American, I've been in 22 states this year. I feel like the average American is awake, like gets it, doesn't know what to do. But you believe that there are White Hats, correct?
Yeah, I've been told that the real military is headquartered in Mount Cheyenne, Colorado, and also at the Thule Air Base in Greenland. They withdrew from Washington, D.C. after January 20th, 2020. Right. He wasn't able to finish his job of draining the swamp because he only looked at the United States. He didn't have enough of a worldview. This is not just about the United States. It's about the entire planet. And if he had coordinated better with the Chinese and the rest of the world, it wouldn't have come to this. But right now, it's the entire world against this group of Satanists who are circling the wagons around Lake Geneva, in the Ukraine, on Silicon Valley, New York, a few places like that.
Right.
And unfortunately, like I say, Israel apparently has broken with them, which is a very big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, they had their big world government conference in Dubai, I saw. So I'm so they're going for it. No matter what happens, if they go down, they're going to have to go down.
Yeah.
They're never going to stop.
And a lot of them have fled. They fled to Dubai, they fled to New Zealand, they fled to southern Argentina.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there's nowhere on this planet where they can hide. They're going to have to face justice.
Yeah.
And they will. I guarantee you. We are winning. And it's just a matter of time now. But I do encourage the American people to get out their video camera phones. If they ever see any of these people on the street, confront them, make them talk. But again, don't get violent, because that's plays into their hands.
Exactly.
Leave the violence to the professionals.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Ben Fulford. You always leave it on a high note, and I agree with you. I think that we're winning, and it's only a matter of time. And I always appreciate you coming. You have such a world view that most people don't have, and more people need. Because if they understood the world, we'd feel a lot better about what's going on here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. I will see you again.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Tell everyone where they can find you, because you've got a great newsletter and a great Q&A every week.
Yeah, BenjaminFulford.net. And the business model I use is that subscribers can get the whole thing right away. And then people can't afford it. They wait a week and they can get it for free, but they cannot participate in what I believe is a very high-level discussion group, which is full of information you won't find anywhere else. All the world's intelligence agencies are on that chat group. So
yeah, I read it. I read it all the time, and I love your Q&As too. They're a great addition to the site.
Sure. So please support our work by going to BenjaminFulford.net. Thanks for.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, sir. I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
'Cause these are my people. my country. This is who I am.